Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. I hope you're having a wonderful day at the conference and enjoying all the talks. This morning, I am delighted to present Barnaby Griffiths. Barnaby is an English language and communication coach and a teacher trainer. And this morning, he will be talking to us live from Barcelona about language coaching techniques to enhance your teaching. Barnaby, good morning.
Good morning, Jane. How you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. Now over to you. We're really looking forward to your presentation. And when you're ready, please start.
Okay, great. Thank you. And welcome to everybody. I'm going to go straight into my presentation. If I can do that smoothly, let's see if that works. Can you see that okay? Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Good. Okay, so I'm going to there's the title of what I'm going to share with you today: language coaching techniques to enhance your teaching. I've been doing this for some time now. I'll give you some background to who I am and why I call myself a language and communication coach rather than an English teacher anymore. That'll be part of the introduction. I must apologize. I have a little bit of a cough, and you may notice that. I'll try not to cough too much. But let's start with what we're going to look at today in this workshop. I will ask you to reflect on a few things as we go along, which is why I call it a workshop rather than a talk. Whether or not we get into any that becomes interactive or not through the chat, we will see. But the content of my talk today is going to be a brief introduction of how I became a language coach or a language and communication coach. Then I'm going to show you the videos that I promised, which are examples of my language coaching method that I use with learners. There's going to be basically three sections or mini sections, subsections of that. One, the first thing we're going to look at in terms of videos is language coaching tools 2. I call it number 2 because I've actually got 4 pillars to my language coaching method. I'm going to show you 3 of them today, examples from 3 of them anyway. So the first one will be part of language coaching tools 2, which is about performance-based language acquisition techniques. More on that when we come to it. The second part of the video section, language coaching tools 3, which is developing oral communication skills, and we'll be looking at speaking strategies and listening strategies. And then a third part of the video section will be language coaching tools 4, which is life coaching techniques for language teachers. But all of this comes under what I call language coaching, language and communication coaching. And I believe that you can incorporate all of this into your teaching very simply and very easily. And I also believe it's where we're headed. You know, a lot of questions nowadays about what's going to become of language teaching and language teachers. What's the future? Are we all going to be swallowed up by AI? And is there going to be a virtual teacher instead of a human teacher before very long? To my mind, coaching tools and techniques are what will prevent that from happening, because by introducing the coaching element into our teaching, I think we become irreplaceable. And maybe we'll talk about that a bit more later. And finally, final section is the takeaways. I'll give you some takeaways from today's workshop. Okay, so let's move along into our first section, which is how I became a language coach. I'll try and keep this quite brief. I just want to give you some background really as to who I am and what I'm doing really. I was an English teacher back in 1995. I've always been a teacher of adults rather than children, although I have done some classes with children and teenagers, but mainly with adults. And then in 1995 in Barcelona, I was approached to do some teacher training on the TESOL certificate course, and I started my career as a TESOL certificate tutor on the CERT course in Barcelona. And that developed gradually. My tutoring of teachers, I went on to develop and in fact co-write the diploma in Barcelona with Duncan Ford at his school here in Barcelona. And we basically ran the diploma, the TESOL diploma there from 1998, I think, onwards. And therefore, since 1998, well, since 95, I've been tutoring English teachers. Since 98, I've been tutoring diploma teachers. And therefore, I basically have a lot of experience of observing English teachers from around the world, because people come to the diploma to Barcelona to do the diploma from all over the world. Some very experienced teachers, some not so experienced teachers, but I basically have, you know, some 28 years of experience tutoring English teachers. So there's a wealth of experience there. Here's a picture of some happy students. I can't really remember why I put that there, to be honest with you. But basically, that's my background in terms of teacher training. But what happened in 2004 is I was given the opportunity to teach English professors at university. And we did the normal thing. We went into the classroom. Here they are with their books. And after a couple of, not very long, couple of classes of looking at our upper intermediate advanced course book, I basically said to them, why are you doing these classes? And they said, well, because we need to do this. And I said, what, you mean lecture in English in front of a whole audience of students? And they said, yeah, that's why we're doing English classes. And I said, well, is this helping these, like studying the course books? And they said, no, not really. So I developed my own courses and offered them to the university and said, look, if you like, I'll run these courses specifically for university professors to improve their lecturing skills in English. And they said, okay, go for it. I did that, and it was very, very successful. And we turned course book based English teaching into what I now call English coaching, because I started to help professors develop the skills and the language, not only skills, but also language, to be able to teach their or lecture in English for their subject. And it became a very different thing to teaching English as far as I was concerned. So I've been doing that for almost 20 years now. My learners' communicative context, I call them clients because I'm a language coach now. Obviously, learners, you can exchange for the word students. The point being, I think, whether you're teaching students at school or whether you're teaching clients in a coaching context, they're all English learners. And therefore, what I'm going to talk about today, what I'm going to show you today is applicable to all of them. But just to give you an idea of my learners' communicative context, I have university lecturers who have to teach in English. I have PhD students who have to present their research in English to international panels. I have radio and television journalists who go on the TV or on radio to talk in English, locally here in Barcelona. Obviously, nowadays, international news and programs, they have to speak in English. And so they need some coaching for that rather than English classes, I would say. And also international business people who have to attend meetings in English with people from all over the world. And that presents its own challenges, as you can imagine. But again, I would emphasize, those are my learners, but I think what I'm going to show you today is applicable to any English learner. The fact of the matter is, we can introduce coaching techniques into how we teach to help our methodology, I think. And that's what I'm going to show you, because I have some videos of me doing that. So here's one of my learners. This is Ellie. Okay, she is basically kind of a pre-intermediate level. Just to give you the idea that I think you can introduce coaching with any level. Some people ask me, is it just for advanced learners? Not at all, no. The idea of what I call language and communication coaching can start at the very beginning, because really we're looking at our learners' communicative contexts, and we're saying to them, what do you need English for? I'm not imposing English on you. I'm not saying this is English, now learn it. I'm saying, what do you need English for? And that is what we're going to focus on in everything we do. And that, I think, is also a difference between coaching and teaching. With teaching, we tend to go into the classroom with preset aims, very often language aims. You haven't done this yet, you need to learn this. Whereas in my case, the content, the materials are the learners, and they basically come to a session and tell me what they need. Now, again, you might say, well, that's not really my situation in the classroom, but I think it is if you think about it. All you have to do is say, what do my students need English for? And that's what we're working from, rather than a course book-based approach. Okay, let me move on. So Ellie is the president of a food company that exports worldwide, very successful company here in Catalonia. I say Catalonia, obviously that's in Spain. But her first language is Catalan, and that will become perhaps notable in these videos. That's why I'm mentioning it. Let's have a quick look then at some videos. So first of all, as I mentioned, one of the pillars of I have 4 pillars to my language coaching methodology. The first one is advanced language teaching techniques. Now, we're not going to mention those today. Those are things that I would teach on the diploma, and I think are very, very useful. And I think the diploma is very useful. But an alternative to that, as I said, is this methodology that I'm going to propose to you today, where advanced teaching techniques, for me, is a part of it. And it's one part of the 4 pillars. This would be the second pillar of my methodology, which is called language acquisition techniques. The language acquisition techniques are based on my, I hate to say the number, but 50 years of language learning myself, as well as teaching and as well as observing and tutoring, basically noting how people acquire language. And you will know there are a lot of theories about language acquisition, and there's a lot of debate about language acquisition, and people have very strong ideas about how we acquire a second language compared to a first language. All of that is very interesting to my mind, and I've talked about that on the diploma for years. When you look at my methodology, I basically think that first language learning has a lot to do with second language learning. So we'll not get into that today, but it will be reflected, I think, in some of the things that we talk about. So first of all, language acquisition. I talk a lot about performance, and I focus a lot on performance when it comes to coaching my learners. Basically, it's not about me transferring knowledge. It's about my learner showing me that they've acquired English to be able to perform in English, because communication is a performance. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I just wanted to introduce it as that, because this is what we're going to look at in this video. Let me move on and do that before I start talking too much. So here, Ellie struggles to make herself understood. We will all be very familiar with that situation. I've given you a little task here. Watch the video and note the change in performance from the beginning to the end of the video, the change in performance. What do you think the change is due to? Okay, that's the idea. So I'm going to show you a video. It's not very long. Just watch the video and have a think. I mean, if you'd like to put something in the chat, by all means, you can do. But just have a little think about what influences this change in performance from the beginning to the end of the video. Okay, here we go. I hope you can hear it, okay?
We spend a lot of money with her hair because he likes very striley. Striley, as dic es deia? Very estirat, very straight.
Oh, and it's not straight normally.
No, he is a little wavy. Menica.
Because she likes it straight.
Yeah.
But it's a little wavy.
Little wavy.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
I should think. So when we spend money on something, not for.
Okay.
So
we spend a lot of money on her hair because she likes it straight, but it's a little wavy.
very good. Again?
We spend a lot of money on her hair because she likes it straight, but it's a little wavy.
Fantastic. Okay.
Right, so first of all, I'm hoping that you did notice a difference in performance. I'm sure you did. What does it come down to? Now, the reason we're looking at these videos today is because what I've done as a teacher trainer and in my coaching courses that I have online is I've broken it all down to look specifically at the technique here that's making this change in performance and basically helping learners improve from something they're struggling to produce to something more accurate and fluent. That's what we're aiming for, accurate and fluent production. But the point is this, that is the whole goal all the time. There is nothing distracting us from that. So I've let you have a look at it. I haven't given you very long to think about it, but let's have a look anyway, and see if this coincides with what you were thinking. So what do you think the change in performance is due to? What did I do after she'd provided her first utterance? What did I do to improve that utterance and improve that performance? Okay, so it's simple. I mean, these are not difficult things, but they do need to be noted that it's part of a process. So first of all, no interruptions. Now that's important because, well, thank you, we've got a chat there. Somebody put my support. Yeah, support is a good word. And that's what coaches do, support, as opposed to perhaps teach. But it's an interesting, yeah, well, that's an interesting debate, but support is definitely part of the idea. So how? What are the elements of support here? No interruptions. This is really interesting because I've spent 20 years watching teachers interrupt their learners, especially at lower levels. Now, interruptions, I think, at higher levels are perfectly acceptable because the advanced learners can deal with it. At lower levels, interrupting the learner because they're not getting it right, that isn't going to help them. What's going to help them is let them finish, and support them, provide them with, feed them with vocabulary, let them finish the sentence before we then mold it into something more English, more accurate, and that they can produce fluently. So no interruptions while she's trying to produce it, except for oral prompts. So in other words, feeding, giving oral prompts while they're trying to produce. Remember, she's a pre-intermediate level, really, as you've seen. Now, you might think that she can't produce that much, but as you can see, she could produce something, and with prompts, it got better. And this is what I'm trying to say. Now, I'm not interrupting here to correct. I'm interrupting to prompt and just keep her going along and make her successfully finish that sentence. I gave her the correct form written on the screen while she was saying it, so she could have, there was actually something for her to refer to on the screen here. She can actually look at what she's saying and adapt it as she's going along. Now, this again, I think is fundamental because if it's done by speaking, if I give her only oral prompts, I think oral prompts are important, but only oral prompts, it's difficult to then include that in what imagine all the things that are going on in your learner's head as they're trying to produce this correct English sentence, all these masses of things. If they're only also trying to assimilate something I'm saying to them, that's probably too much for them. But if I tell them something and also put it on the screen in front of them, they can incorporate that as they go along. I checked the meaning after we'd finished the sentence just to make sure that that's what she wanted to say, which, you know, that's up for debate as well. Some people debate whether that's valid or not, to check, is that what you mean? Because again, some people would say, how do they know that's what they mean? But the fact of the matter is, most people, when they see something in writing and they understand it better than, they understand that's what they wanted to say or not, because it's in writing. And that's my point here. So I checked the meaning. I gave a brief oral explanation of the correct form. So I basically, and this, you might call this correction. I said, we spend something on. But again, I didn't dwell on that. I didn't say, let's now learn prepositions. We will come to prepositions. We'll mention to her that prepositions are important and that she needs to incorporate them into her rehearsal sentences, as we'll come to later, hopefully. But importantly, it was a very brief oral explanation of the correct form. We spend something on. We spend money on something. Then she read it aloud. I praised her, but then I asked her to repeat it and say it again. And so therefore, there's a whole process here. If you look at this, there were 8 things here that I was doing to get her from a very stuttering, not very accurate, certainly not fluent utterance in English to, at the end of it, remember, quite fluent, quite accurate. Now, I'm not saying my job is done there. What I'm saying is that is how we should address our learners' utterances initially, for them to then go away and rehearse those. And I use the word rehearse intentionally, to rehearse those sentences so they become proficient in those sentences. Because basically I'm saying, these are the lines you need to learn. we're like actors here, and we're learning our lines because you're going to say these things again and again and again. And if we don't give our learners the opportunity to say them again and again and again, they're never going to produce them accurately and fluently. So moving along, a summary of that video. Performance is at the heart of my language coaching methodology, meaning that I and my learners focus wholly on the accurate and fluent production of any new language they want to produce. That is the focus of everything that I'm doing. And that, I think, you'll find would contrast with normal language teaching. Now, I'm just going to leave that on the screen for a second while I cough and turn off my microphone. If I can do that, just a second. Well, couldn't find the microphone there. Sorry about that. But anyway, let's move along. Okay, so that's the first video. Let's move along. Here's another one of my clients or learners. As I said, I use the terms interchangeably. I call them clients because I'm a coach, but obviously you could call them a learner. This is Ignacy, and he's a university professor and the head of an international research group. Now, he's an advanced learner of English. His English is very, very good. So why would he need an English teacher? Well, he doesn't, but he needs an English coach. And this is my point here, really. Now we're looking at communication skills, developing communication skills, speaking strategies. So when it comes to skills, we're going to talk a lot about strategies, developing strategies. And coaching, again, is a big part of that. So Ignacy is a fluent advanced speaker of English, but he's told me that his non-native students don't understand him in class. What advice might you give him? Again, as a language coach, advice is part of my job here. Now, I'm sure you'll say as a teacher too, absolutely. But very clearly, as a coach, I'm going to try and guide him in how he communicates and how he can communicate better. So, we're going to watch a video of me giving him that advice, okay? So first of all, have a little think about what you might say to him. There's some obvious things here. Why his non-native students don't understand him when he's lecturing in English, but his English is good. So what's going on here? And what needs to happen for him to be communicating better with his students? So let's have a look and see me talking to Ignacy about this, and let's note anything that I tell him in terms of advice. So watch the video and note how I address the issue.
What is useful are these basic strategies. So slow down is an obvious one. Just simply speak less fast. But at the same time, it's not the same as being emphatic. And just to show you the difference, so you see the two next to each other. I'm going to give you two sentences, one non-emphatic and one emphatic. So here's the first one. And the first one, again, is just a flow of speech like this, where I expect you to understand all of the content, because all I'm doing is giving you lots of words with content in them that you should be able to understand. And that was just a flow of language that for you, you probably understood. But it's going to be very challenging. And especially if you can imagine that over 50 minutes or 45 minutes, it's really not intelligible enough for students to absorb or assimilate. The difference will important words I'm emphasizing. So I'm placing stress where I want students to place their attention. So, okay, this might sound exaggerated, Ignacy, but what it does is it transmits a very clear message compared to the stream of language. So often the lecturer just talks, and that's what they're doing, they're talking. Lecturing is not the same as talking. Lecturing has to have these elements, and these elements are, first of all, slow down. That's, you know, even if it's 10%, it's going to make a difference. 20% makes a difference. Emphasize the key, and when we talk about emphasizing, we talk about keywords, content words. And so therefore the grammar words we can simply express like this, but then when we want to say something really important, we stress it like this.
Oops. Okay, so that was a little longer, that video. There was plenty in there, I think, but I'm going to move along time-wise. I want to see more videos. So let's have a look at, again, the process, because there's a lot going on here, I think. How did I address the issue? I advised him to slow down. That's pretty obvious. Anyone would tell him to do that. He speaks too fast, as most Spanish and Catalan speakers do. So it's quite an obvious thing that we can do as language coaches. Show them how to slow down as well, and be and what the difference is between speaking very fast like this and slowing down how we speak. 20% difference, 10% difference. Notice the difference. I advised him to use emphatic delivery. Now, I use the word delivery a lot talking to my learners, excuse me, because again, about how we communicate, delivery is fundamentally important. And therefore we can say to our learners, how are you delivering your message? Now, again, you might, as an English teacher, maybe you teach kids, you might say, well, this doesn't really reflect how I teach my kids. No, but absolutely, you can look at your, and any learner of any age or level, you can look at them and say, how is your delivery? Are you clear? Are you speaking in a way that people understand? Are you mumbling? Are you speaking too fast? Delivery is very important. I often mention with my university professors or lecturers or anybody who has to talk to an audience in public, try to sound like a politician. And I don't mean in terms of content, heaven forbid. What I mean is in terms of delivery. They're trained, politicians are trained to deliver their message like I'm delivering it now. And how emphatic is that? If that's your communicative context, which it clearly is for Ignazi here, then that's what you need to be aware of. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to speak like that all the time. Of course they don't. We have different gears, and I mentioned that in my training, talking about the different gears that we can use in terms of first, second, third, fourth gear and how we talk, but also levels of emphasis in our delivery. I also explained emphatic delivery to him. I told him what I meant. I modeled it for him, and I said, okay, this is not emphatic, blah, 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 blah. This is emphatic, and I noticed the difference. And I think you'll see that he was taking notes, which is a very good sign in my mind. I explained that lecturing is not the same as talking. Again, communicative context. Are you talking to your friends? Are you talking at a conference? What is your communicative context, and how should your delivery reflect that? And I wrote all this down in his coaching document, which I give to him at the end of the session, obviously. Oh, sorry, and that's the end of that. But this is not the end. That's not the end of. That's not where I leave it with my learner, with Ignazi. I would then have him, or I did then have him, go away and video himself with different speeds, different levels of emphasis. Basically, get himself happy with his own delivery by videoing himself and being and evaluating himself, assessing himself and how he delivers his message. So using video recordings to do that yourself. You don't need me for that. As a language coach, I'm sending my learners away and saying, video yourself, take what I've told you, observe yourself, and decide for yourself what is a good delivery, what is a good level of speed or emphasis for your message. So to summarize this little section, developing oracy skills of speaking and listening is key for any language learner and should form part of any language course, I believe. And in fact, a lot of schools now are coming to me and saying, we need our teachers to be trained in developing oracy skills. And that's where I'm finding more interest now is this is something that in America, for example, everyone takes for granted that kids are taught to communicate well, to deliver their message well. In Europe, not so much, in my experience. Something we need to work on as language teachers is oracy skills. I coach my learners to develop these skills using strategies. In this example, we looked at emphatic delivery. That's one strategy. As a follow-up, I had Ignazi make several videos of himself lecturing emphatically until he was more confident doing it. Okay, let's move along. Communication skills, techniques for developing listening. So again, as a language coach, part of my job here is to give my learners give my learners strategies, and I'm going to use different techniques to do that. Here, Ellie, again, doesn't understand my question. Again, a familiar situation for most of us, I believe. Watch the video and decide how you would respond in this situation. Okay, so again, I'm going to move it along quickly because there's a couple more videos and I want you to see all of them.
So normally you would just travel to Asia.
Sorry, Asia.
Okay, so there's your video. She didn't understand the question. Now, again, she's a pre-intermediate learner, but she travels to Asia all the time. So the fact that she didn't understand this question was very concerning for me and for her. It should be. So how would you respond to that? Now, there are lots of ways of responding to that, but I'm going to show you how I responded to it because I think it's very interesting. Here's how would you respond? We're not going to go into that now time-wise, but I mean, I'm sure you have your own idea. Well, I would do this, I would do that. But watch how I responded to that situation where my learner didn't understand a very key, obvious question. Watch the video and note any techniques.
So normally you would just travel to Asia.
Sorry, Asia.
Normally you would travel to Asia, to Japan and China.
Ah, see, Asia, exactly.
Very simple, very obvious. What technique was it? There was actually only one technique. Repeat the question in exactly the same way. This is fundamental, exactly the same way, but with contextual clues. Now, why am I highlighting this? I'll tell you why. Because for over 20 years, I've watched English teachers ask questions in class. Students don't understand and they reformulate. Now, okay, that's one technique. But what are we doing if we reformulate the question? We're basically acknowledging that that original question, which is the question I wanted to ask, has not been understood. And therefore, if I reformulate it, then they're not going to hear it again in the way that they will need to hear it to understand it. I don't know if I explained that very clearly, but the point being is, if I ask a very obvious, important question to somebody and they can't understand it, if I try and change it or reformulate it in some way, then they're still not going to understand the question when somebody asks them that. So if we ask them exactly the same question, but with contextual clues, which may be verbal, in this case, Japan and China, or it may be visual, it may be gesture, I might be pointing to something, but in some way I repeat the exact same question, but give them clues to understand it, then we get that aha moment. I think, oh, Asia. Now that is absolutely key for me, that my learner went from not understanding the question to understanding the question. This is the point that I'm trying to get across. And she only did that because I repeated exact same question with contextual clues. So developing listening skills constitutes a key challenge for English learners, but there are numerous useful techniques to help them with this. One simple technique as an instructor, whether a teacher or a coach, is to exactly repeat any utterance or utterances they haven't understood, but adding contextual or visual clues so they experience that key aha moment, thereby achieving success and boosting confidence. Again, these are all coaching ideas, the idea that success boosts confidence, and therefore the amount of times we have a lack of success in the classroom, especially with listening, it destroys their confidence. We know this. So we need to have successful listening tasks, exercises that actually develop their listening rather than just test it. And there's so much to say on this, but no time. So we can discuss it another time in another moment, but let's move along. That was just a simple technique to help our learners develop their listening. Very simple. And finally, this is the last one I've got for you. This is bringing in some life coaching techniques for language teachers. It's Ellie again. Here, Ellie has forgotten a pronunciation rule that I've shown her in the past, or a tendency, if you don't like the word rule here. Watch the video and note how Ellie is feeling and decide how you would respond in this situation. Okay, so let's move along quickly.
Is it trimming or is it triming?
I don't know. Streaming or driving? I don't know. Streaming.
Yes. Now, do you remember the rule? We had a pronunciation rule. Do you remember? Which is double consonant. Do you remember this? Double consonant equals short vowel. So what does this now? Preceding means before.
I need to revise all our sessions, eh?
Okay, so this may seem familiar, this face from a language learner. If you look at her face right now, I need to revise all our sessions. She's staring at the screen, she's looking down, she's got her head in her hands. Tragedy has struck. She's basically saying, oh God, I can't remember anything that we've done. But wait a minute, so how would you react to this? Now, most teachers I know, or most people I know, would probably say, yep, yeah, you need to revise everything. Is that going to be motivating for her though? So let's have a look and see how I reacted as a language coach to try and motivate her from the situation she's in right now. As you can see, she's frustrated, she's tired, she's, you know, she needs some motivation here. So what can we do as a language coach or teacher? How would you respond? Well, let's move along. Watch the video and note my reaction.
I need to revise all our sessions, eh?
Oh, no, but this is interesting, Ellie. What's interesting here is that your instinct, what was your instinct here? To pronounce it? Trimming, right? And your instinct was correct. So you have the rule isn't important. The important thing is to develop your instinct for English pronunciation. So because of the work that we've done with these rules, with these pronunciation rules, maybe you don't remember the rule, but your instinct tells you that you see a double M, and therefore the preceding vowel is not I, but I. You see what I mean? And so this is trim. Trimming.
Okay, so how did I react to her frustration? I motivated her by eliciting her instinct. I said, well, wait a minute. You're saying you have to revise everything, but would you say trim or trim? Trimming or triming? And she said trimming. Okay, so basically, I confirmed that her instinct was correct, and this is a positive thing. So I told her that explicit knowledge of the rule is not important. She doesn't need to, learners don't need to tell me rules about pronunciation or about English. Heaven forbid that that's important. That's not important at all. What's important is that their instinct is developed so that when they do come across words that they might not know or that they need to learn, that their instinct is good enough for them to know how to pronounce it or spell it, for example. But basically, this is about confirming that her instinct is good and is developing for English and turning what was a frustrating situation into a positive outcome. So I told her this represents progress and therefore a positive outcome. Okay, coming to the end, aren't we? So learning a language is an inherently frustrating process. We know this. And motivating our learners is a fundamental part of a teacher's or coach's job. We can do this by creating the conditions for success and confirming successful outcomes, no matter how small, on our learners' language learning journey. So in other words, as a language coach, a lot of the things that we might do as a coach are positive orientation, success, aiming for success, confirming success, positive outcomes. In other words, providing support, which Jane so accurately mentioned at the beginning of this whole session, the importance of support as a coach, and therefore me being there for them as a coach to say, yes, you're getting there. Yes, you're getting there. And taking anything we can to say that's actually a good thing. And that was an example of this. Now then, coming to the end. So let's just have a quick takeaway. Here's a summary for you. My approach to language coaching has 4 main pillars, as I mentioned at the beginning. The first is advanced language teaching techniques. We haven't looked at those today, but an example of that would be effective error correction. And I have a whole section of that on my courses that I provide online. Performance language-based language acquisition techniques is the second pillar. We had a look at performance techniques today, which was building rehearsal sentences. I showed you an example of me building a sentence which improved performance. Another one would be using sound chunks, which again, we haven't had a look at today, but that would be an example of a language-based language acquisition technique that I use with my learners. The third pillar would be developing oral communication skills. Here we looked at the speaking skill of modeling emphatic speech for our learners. And the listening technique we can use is repeating what they say exactly with contextual clues. And finally, life coaching techniques. There are lots of these, but we just had a brief look at one, which was creating the conditions for success and confirming successful outcomes. You may well say as a teacher, oh, I do most of this anyway. I don't doubt it. If you're a good teacher, I'm sure you do. But it's important to note the processes involved here and to realize that that's what we're doing, and to, I think, understand that this involves actual coaching and not just what we traditionally call teaching. So just enough. Oh, hang on.
Not only in English.
Sorry, this is a quick testimonial here from Ellie at the end. It's only a few seconds. Oh, that wasn't right.
You help me a lot, not only in English, with the attitude too. And the attitude is tan important com l'idioma.
It's as important as the language.
Això, as important as. Thank you very much, Barney.
No problem, Ellie. I mean,
so I'm just showing you that because it's important that, to me, what she's saying it's not just about language. You're helping me with my attitude towards learning English, and it's helping me a lot. That's what I do as a language coach. So to finish off then, if you're interested in receiving my free language coaching tips and materials, here's a little bit of at the end to give you some further follow-up. I have a newsletter. I know I've got to finish, haven't I, Jane? Can I just show this? So if people want to join my newsletter, there's a QR code. Sorry, Jane.
No problem, no problem.
Okay. There's a QR code for you. And if you just click on that, you'll find my website where you can sign up for the newsletter for free, get some free resources. There's also a tab on my website with some free resources. You can share this with your colleagues as well. And finally, just very quickly, I've got some online courses as well. I'm just going to show you the QR code for that. There's a little, we haven't really got time, I understand, for this, but there's a little quote from Lindsay Clanfield. I don't know if you know the name, but he's quite a famous name as an award-winning author of ELT course books, who's given me a very nice review of my courses online. And I have a special offer for you. If you want to do any of my courses online, there's a QR code that takes you to my email address. You email me and I will send you a discount code for any of my courses. I know I have to come to an end there, but I'll leave it on the screen just in case anybody wants to click on that. Feel free to contact me anyway at this email address if you have any questions about language coaching or any follow-up from today's talk. More than happy to answer any of your questions or guide you in any direction. Have I done okay, Jane, time-wise?
Wonderful.
Okay.
Excellent job. And thank you so much for you're showing us real examples of learners and how they respond to positive techniques. It's really really lovely to see. And
excuse me, I've been to many conferences myself, many talks myself, and so many times I think I would like to see this in action. And that's why I've videoed a lot of my, obviously with my learners' permission, videoed their sessions and said, I'm going to use these if that's okay in my training, and they're more than happy for me to use it. And I think it's great to see it in action, isn't it? I mean, I've been very fortunate to watch over 20 years of people teaching, and you get so much information from observing people, don't you?
It should be part of every teacher's job, is just to be able to peer observe or share.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that hardly ever happens because of time restrictions. So, I mean, as I said, my courses online, I have 8 hours of video for people to watch. So if people are interested in that, then come along and ask me about it first. You don't need to just jump in there, just, find out about it, and lots of videos to watch, basically, and to learn from.
Well, thank you very, very much. I think a lot of people might be running off to the next session.
Yeah. I didn't notice any questions in the chat, so in the Q&A.
Because everything was so clearly presented, we didn't.
Oh, thank you, Jane. That's positive. Oh, there you go. There's coaching me as a speaker. That's very nice.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a lovely afternoon.
Yeah, same to you. Thank you, Jane.
Enjoy the conference, and really, really nice to meet you.
Thank you. You too. Enjoy it, everybody. Bye-bye.